Chapter 36. Ashley glanced in her rearview mirror as she merged onto the main highway leading to Metler Ridge. A pair of headlights danced in the distance behind her. She wondered if they belonged to Ethan's vehicle. She activated the cruise control and set the speed for 3 miles under the posted limit, slow enough to allow her pursuer to catch up and hopefully pass her, but fast enough to prevent him from becoming suspicious. She was certain that Ethan had been hiding in the shadows at the hospital, surveilling her every move. But did he believe the words she shouted to the heavens? He shouldn't, because he's smart, girl. Would he fall into her trap? Her current plan entailed holding her ex-husband at gunpoint. Girl. At Laurel Bluff until the authorities arrived. But if something happened and the plan failed, she wouldn't hesitate to shoot him. You sure? She knew he wouldn't think twice before murdering a member of her family. Of course, his action had proven he preferred to make them suffer first. The sign for Tucker Cave Road popped into view ahead of her car. The narrow road snaked through the Tucker Holler and then connected to the road that climbed upward to the bluff. The shortcut was shaved 10 minutes off of Ashley drive time, but instead of turning, she stuck to the main highway. She watched her rearview mirror as she passed the road. The headlights had followed several car limps behind since she left Cedar View. Cedar View veered to the right and then disappeared. The vehicle had turned down the shortcut. Deep in her soul, she knew the driver was Ethan. He would arrive at the bluff ahead of her, just as she hoped. Her stomach knotted as she imagined their confrontation. Ethan would be armed as well. That was a certainty. She would be forced to lure him out into the open and trick him into dropping his weapon before she drew her pistol. In order to do so, she'd have to appear vulnerable, weak, eager to give in to all his demands. Okay, I'm going to have faith in you, girl. I'm going to have faith in you. Ashley slowed her sedan as she entered the city limits of Metler Ridge. The town lay still and silent as The town lay still and silent as though holding its breath in anticipation. She turned south, winding her way up the side of the mountain towards Laurel Bluff. Over 8 years had passed since she last traveled the road. Nothing seemed to have changed. The way was still lined with banks of limestone and cedar trees with the scant numbers of farmhouse and trailers peppered in. When she reached the top of the mountain, the trees' cover split apart on her left. Below her, the lights of the small town of Metler Ridge sparkled like gemstones. Ashley maneuvered her car off the road and onto the makeshift parking area of hard-packed dirt. The bluff was a popular makeout spot for local teens, the place where she and Ethan had first made love. She remembered the night clearly, though not fondly. Thinking their love would last forever, she agreed to consummate their relationship in the bed of Ethan's truck under a blanket of stars. A week later, they were married, and that's when her nightmare had begun. Taking a deep breath, Ashley pushed her sedan door open and slid out, scanning the bluff to the tree lines on her left and far right. Her heart thumped in her chest. She didn't see Ethan, but the weight of his eyes pressed against her once again. He was here, watching from the darkness. Beneath the light of the quartered moon, she ambled across the parking area towards the large flat rock that served as a bench for people who wished to enjoy the view from the overlook. She timed her steps, being careful not to move too fast. It was important for her to appear lost in thought, as though she was reminiscing about her days with Ethan. Now, why would he think you would think that, girl? Sweat coated her palms as she fought back the fear surging in her chest. Ashley knew the scene she was about to perform had to be award-winning, convincing enough to impress the toughest critics. Her baby's future, his or her very life depended on it. When she reached the rock, She halted and remained standing. She gazed out across the valley of twinkling lights. This was her stage, her audience hidden in the shadows. It was time for the show to begin. "I'm so sorry, Ethan," she shouted into the night. "I was wrong." She glanced to her left and right, pretending she was feeling her ex-husband's eyes on her for the first time. "You're here, aren't you?" she yelled. "I can feel your soul next to mine. We'll always be connected for eternity." She listened for a movement around her. The harmony of tree frogs, crickets rang out in the night, but she could hear no other sound. "I never should have testified against you. I realize now that you would have come back for me, that you would have pulled me out of the pit. I know you were just trying to teach me a lesson." The chorus of forest creatures continued around her, but there was no sign of her ex-husband. "I wish I could go back in time and make things right, but we both know I can't. We can only go forward." Her next words would be critical. They could mean the difference between life and her death. "I belong to you," she cried out. "To you and only you forever." She breathed in deep, steeled herself for what would happen next. "If you're here, Ethan, come out where I can see you. Come and claim your wife." A split second after the words had boomed from her lips, Ashley caught sight of a dark form moving near the tree lines on her left. Terror struck her heart like a bolt of lightning. Ethan slithered into the moonlight, a smile on his face. Chapter 37. Ashley's muscles trembled and her knees threatened to fail her as Ethan sauntered into the moonlight on top of Laurel's Bluff. Blood stained his camouflage shirt. His jaw appeared bruised, and his wicked grin was missing a tooth. His cold eyes bored into her, igniting a fear in her soul that was stronger than any she'd ever felt. They were alone, face to face. He could kill her now, throw her body over the cliff, and there would be no witnesses to force her to pay for his crime. The plan had been to fool her ex-husband to make him believe he had won his twisted game, to disarm him and hold him at gunpoint, shooting him if necessary. Then she called the police, keeping Ethan as her prisoner until they arrived. But now that he was here, with just a few feet separating them, she realized she may have been fooling herself. Child, yes you have, because... Child, let me sip on that 1 second. Did she possess the courage and wit to follow through? Was she cunning enough to defeat him? Or, after all these years, was Ethan the one who was still in control? A smile danced across his lips as he reached out and slid his fingers along the curve of her jaw. Oh my God. He too close. Her skin stung from his touch. She wanted to jerk backwards, seize her pistol, and fire round after round into his chest, not stopping until his lifeless body fell to the ground. But although he carried no visible weapons like Ashley, he might have a firearm holstered in the waistband of his pants, hidden underneath his camouflage hunting shirt. In a contest for the quickest draw, she would be sure to lose. She'd have to wait for the right opportunity. Her timing had to be perfect. Otherwise, both she and her baby risked forfeiting their lives. Fighting an impulse to flee, Ashley stood still, allowing Ethan to look her over. She couldn't flinch. She had to keep up the pretense that she was glad they'd been reunited. His eyes swept across her body from head to toe. She kept her arms pressed close to her sides, hoping he wouldn't notice the bulge of her pistol. "Been a long time, girl," he said. Oh gosh. Lust heavy in his voice. His tone soured her stomach. She resisted the urge to slap him, fixing the counterfeit smile on her face instead. "I've missed you, Ethan," she lied, trying to inject a note of longing into her words. He shook his head. You ain't missed me none. You've been shacked up in that fancy house with some rich man. It's over between me and Brett, she assured him. We're not together anymore, but I bet you already know that. Of course he knew it. The breakup had been part of her ex-husband's plan. She was positive. Ashley knew he counted on her ending her relationship with Brett when she learned of the affair. One more loss to make her suffer through. Shane didn't give me no choice tonight, he said, watching her eyes. I had to do it. Pain ripped through her heart at the mention of her little brother, but she refused to let it show. She realized Ethan was testing her, trying to get a read on her true feelings. I remember all the times you tried to warn me about my family, told me that they didn't really love me, she said. I know that if I let them stay in my life, they still try to keep you and me apart. Ethan stared at her as if he was wondering what to make of her words. But you've had family problems of your own now, haven't you? I know you pushed Ray off the cliff near Quail Fields campground. He laughed. Ray deserved to die. He was going to double-cross me. Didn't want to help me no more after he found out what I did to the guard, so I put him out of his misery. What about Neil? He done his own self in, saved me the trouble. Ashley had been right on both counts. Hand over your phone, Ethan ordered. She didn't want to relinquish her phone. It could prove to be her lifeline, but if she refused, he would realize this was a trap. He'd kill her. She pulled the phone from her back pocket and placed it onto the palm of her ex-husband's outstretched hand. Ethan slipped her cell into the side pocket of his camo pants. That rich man weren't no good for you, he said. She nodded, playing along. I realize that now. No man could ever love me the way that you did. She'd never allow another man to terrorize and control her like that again. Damn right. Ethan straightened his posture as though he was proud of the abusive ways he'd treated her during their marriage. You weren't born to no city girl. You weren't born to be no city girl, he told her. His gesture toward the tree line. You belong in these here mountains. Or something like them. I belong with you, Ethan, she cooed, looking directly into his eyes, trying her best to make sure he believed the lie. She was having trouble reading him. Couldn't tell whether she hit the mark. She refused to allow his reaction to her words to show on his face. He refused to allow his reaction to her words to show on his face. You still belong to me, he stated matter-of-factly. Can't no judge take that away with what's mine. Ashley knew he was referring to the judge that had granted her divorce based on the ground that Ethan had been convicted of her attempted murder. He pointed his index finger at her chest. Everything I'd done since I broke out was for your own good. You need teaching. It ain't right for a woman to go against her husband. He shook his head and braced his hands on his hips. You should know that. I promise you, I've learned my lesson now, and I won't ever repeat my past mistakes. This time, she makes sure Ethan never hurt another innocent person. She killed him first. Ashley inched to her left, trying to get a better look at her ex-husband's side, searching for the slightest protrusion, proof that his clothing concealed a weapon. Although she failed to spot a lump or bud, she still wasn't convinced that he was unarmed. I ain't sure you're done learning yet. His words prickled the hair on the back of her neck. What did he mean? Girl, you know what he mean. Had he already made the decision to kill her here and now, or did he plan to kidnap her and kill her family first? She had to defuse the situation. I know that I'm to blame for everything that happened. You don't need to do anything else to prove it. Even though she'd been young and naive, she'd married Ethan on her own free will. She brought him into the lives of her loved ones, and she carried the guilt of his crimes with her until the day she died. A fire lit in his eyes. It ain't a woman's place to call the law on her husband. The price got to be paid. Oh boy. Panic began to rise in Ashley's chest. Her plan was falling apart. Rather than calming Ethan down, her words just seemed to kindle his anger. She had to shift the focus of their conversation. "Come and sit down on the rock, Ethan," she said, stepping toward the slab often used as a bench, the remnants of a campfire in the hand-dug pit in front of it. "Instead of talking about the past, we can talk about our future together." If she could entice him to sit down, she might be able to gain advantage over him. It would be harder for him to draw his gun, if he had one. She could begin massaging his shoulders, get him to relax, and then shove her pistol in the back of his neck. "You think I'm stupid," Ethan laughed. "You don't want no future with me. You want me dead. See, I told you, girl. Told you." "Don't say that." Ashley realized she was running out of time. She had to convince Ethan that she still loved him before he decided to kill her. "I want to get married again and have a home and a family." That statement was true, but as Ethan had said, she didn't want him in her future, and he was right. She hoped he would be sentenced to death for his crimes. "You want a life with me?" A wicked smile crossed his face. "Then prove it." He stepped towards her. "Right now." A chill coursed through her as though ice water had been injected in her veins. She feared what his expression implied. Would he try to rape her? She had to play along and pretend to be interested in him, divert his attention so that she could draw her pistol. "Have a seat on the rock," she said, forcing an alluring tone into her voice. "We can get comfortable and then I'll prove to you how I feel." His cold, still eyes raked across her again. Ethan sidled, how do you pronounce that? Sidled, yeah, that word, towards the flat slab of limestone. His gaze fastened on her. Suspicion reeked from his pores. He eased down onto the end of the rock. In an attempt to lessen his apprehension, Ashley had been standing in front of him between the slab and the stone-rimmed fire pit. She inched to his side and settled her left hand on his shoulder. The feel of his body beneath her skin sickened her. Hatred flooded her heart. She nailed her fingers into the muscles beneath the camouflage fabric of his shirt. Ethan tilted his head, keeping her under his watchful eyes. She smiled down at him while her insides quaked. In a slow, deliberate movement, she slid between him, gripping his other shoulder with her right hand. She pressed her thumb into the sinew of his back and continued to work his muscles. "How does this feel?" she asked, her voice just above a whisper. She felt the tension escaping Ethan's body as he began to relax. It was time to make her move. She knew she only possessed a single chance to overtake him. One wrong step and both she and her unborn child could end up dead. Breathing in deep, she struck fast. Ashley yanked her pistol from its holster. At the same moment, Ethan jerked towards her as his iron fingers clamped around her left wrist. He flung her forward, spinning her body around. The weapon flew from her grasp. She hit the ground hard. The wind knocked from her lungs. Ethan jumped on top of her. His evil laugh echoed in her ears. See you in the next chapter.